Hello everyone, and welcome to another short video on our own devices. I'm Jean Messier, and here I have a collection of what many of you will recognize as twin lens reflex or TLR cameras, a type of camera very popular from the 1920s to around the 1960s. Only no, they're not. See, while these might look like regular TLR cameras, these are in fact simpler and cheaper lookalikes, often called pseudo TLR cameras, that were manufactured to capitalize on the reputation and popularity of the genuine article. So these were very popular from around the 1940s to the 1960s, and there were hundreds of different models manufactured by dozens of manufacturers around the world. So I thought it might be interesting to have a closer look at these and show you how they differ from actual TLR cameras. Now, twin lens reflex cameras appeared around the 1880s, with the London stereoscopic company's Carlton of 1885 being one of the first commercially successful models. Now, prior to this, the standard procedure for focusing a plate camera was to replace the photographic plate with a ground glass focusing screen, adjust the focus on the lens, and then swap the screen out for the actual sensitized photographic plate and take your picture. Now, in a twin lens reflex camera, you have a separate viewfinder lens mounted parallel to and geared with the main lens, the image from which is reflected off of a 45-degree mirror, hence the name reflex, onto a separate permanent ground glass focusing screen. And this is set up so that as you adjust the viewfinder lens using the focusing screen as a reference, you are simultaneously adjusting the focus on the main lens, which shares the same focal length. And the advantage of this is that it allows you to take your photograph immediately after you've finished focusing, rather than having to wait to swap in your plate. Now, this is in contrast to the single lens reflex or SLR system. A hinged reflex mirror sits between the lens and the film, reflecting the image up through a prism into the viewfinder. When the shutter release is depressed, the mirror hinges out of the way, allowing the light from the lens to reach the film. Now, while the system became near universal on professional film and later digital cameras, the fact that it is more complex and thus expensive, and if poorly implemented, can produce camera shake, allowed twin lens reflex cameras to enjoy 30 years of popularity. Now, one of the first truly popular twin lens reflex film cameras was the Rolleiflex, introduced in 1929 by German manufacturer Franke und Heidecke. Now, the Rolleiflex proved highly influential, with its basic design being imitated by hundreds of subsequent twin lens reflex cameras, including this one. This is a Lubitel 2. This is a Soviet twin lens reflex camera manufactured between 1954 and 1980 by, and forgive my Russian here, the Leningradskoye Optiko-Mechanichskoye Objedinenie, aka the Leningrad Optical Mechanical Association, or LOMO for short. And if that name sounds familiar, it's because LOMO is the root of lomography, which is a photographic movement based around taking artistically imperfect lo-fi images using cheap toy cameras like those manufactured by LOMO. Now, while the Lubitel 2 is of inferior construction to many professional-grade twin lens reflex cameras with a largely injection-molded plastic body, all of the basic components are present and accounted for. As you can see, we have our main lens below and our viewfinding lens above, the two being linked by gear teeth on the exterior, so that if I turn one, the other one turns as well. Now, there are distance markings on the viewfinder lens for scale or guess focusing, but focusing is meant to be done visually using the focusing screen under this folding hood. Now, instead of a full ground glass screen, this has a large clear viewing lens with a small ground portion in the middle, allowing the image to be seen more clearly while still allowing for precise focusing. And having the viewfinder at the top like this was intended for use in candid photography with the camera held at your waist like this. Right, so let's compare a true TLR camera like the Lubitel 2 to the pseudo TLR cameras I had here. So in order of introduction, these are Brownie Reflex Synchro, produced by Kodak from 1941 to 1952, the Duoflex 2, produced by Kodak from 1947 to 1960, the Argus 75, produced by Argus Incorporated of Ann Arbor, Michigan from 1949 to 1964, the Imperial 620 Reflex, produced by the Herbert George Company of Chicago starting in 1950. This is the Sears Tower 14, originally a Bonita 66, manufactured by Delora of Radevenwald, Germany from 1951 to 1958, before being rebadged and sold by Sears Roebuck. This is the FLL Lindar, manufactured by Friedrich Linden of Lüdenscheid, Germany from 1951 to 1959. I also have a FLL Porter, which is nearly identical to the LiDAR, but lacks the former's long exposure shutter and lens filter. And finally, we have the Brownie Starflex, produced by Kodak from 1957 to 1964. Now, while these cameras are certainly styled after true TLRs, they differ significantly in that, in most cases, neither the main nor the viewfinder lens are adjustable or linked to one another. In fact, the viewfinder assembly is just an enlarged version of what's known as a brilliant viewfinder, which consists of two positive lenses with a 45-degree mirror in between, which produces an upright yet left-right reverse image. And being so simple, these were integrated into all sorts of cameras, especially simple box cameras like the Kodak Brownie. Often these had two separate brilliant viewfinders for taking portrait and landscape shots. Folding cameras like this Kodak #1 also sometimes included a brilliant viewfinder for waist-level candid shots, in addition to a regular direct viewfinder. As you can see, the brilliant finders on these Pseudo TLRs take many different forms. Some are small, others very large, some have no hoods, while others have simple hinged hoods or even more complex folding hoods, just like actual TLRs. The Sears Tower 14 uses an older version of the system called a Watson finder, where a ground glass focusing screen replaces the second lens. Now, these cameras also vary widely in their capabilities and accessories. For example, the Duoflex 2, Brownie Reflex Synchro, Brownie Starflex, and Imperial 620 Reflex have flash synchronization attachments and even their own proprietary flash guns, while others do not. While most of these cameras have fixed focus lenses, this Tower 14 can be focused from 6 feet to infinity by sliding this lever, which extends and retracts the lens. Most have no aperture control, but this Brownie Starflex has a set of 2 Waterhouse stops for color and black and white film, while this FLL LiDAR has a slide-in yellow filter to provide greater contrast when shooting outdoor scenes with a blue sky using black and white film. And finally, all these cameras use a rotary-style shutter, which has been nearly universal for simple box-type cameras from the beginning. Some of these are manually operated, while others are cocked by turning the film advance knob. Finally, some shutter mechanisms, like in the TLL LiDAR, have a mechanism that, when engaged, prevents the shutter from closing until the shutter lever is released, allowing for long exposures. And that, dear viewers, is a brief overview of Pseudo TLR cameras. Now, this was another rather tech-light episode, I'll admit, but I'd just come into possession of a large lot of vintage cameras, including these. I thought it would be interesting to take a closer look at this rather forgotten trend in consumer camera design, so I hope you found it interesting as well. Now, this lot of cameras also came with many different versions of the iconic Kodak Brownie, and so in the future, I might actually make a video on the evolution of that camera, so stay tuned for that. In the meantime, thank you so much for watching. I'll see you next time in another video where I'll look at yet more cameras and other fascinating devices just like these. Until then, I'm Jean Messier from Our Own Devices. Have a great day.